I think that's the key thing about innovation is everyone should be an innovator, and you shouldn't pretend like you know everything from the beginning to end. You need other people to make this happen. And that's really what we've done on our team at EMC is everyone on our team is brilliant in a completely different way. And I think that's what makes our team so successful. And I love working with people on my team because they're so much smarter than me in different ways. This is Angela Noble from EMC Insurance, and this is the future of insurance.
Hey everyone, I'm Rob Savitsky from Duck Creek Technologies, a provider of SaaS core systems for P&C insurers, and I'm the host of our new podcast series, Conversations on the Creek. In each episode, we interview our partners from across the InsurTech ecosystem about industry trends, innovative technology solutions insurers are using today, and where P&C insurers may be headed in the future. So listen and subscribe to Conversations on the Creek on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and by visiting duckcreek.com/podcasts/partner.
Angela Noble, it's great to be able to sit down with you and talk a little bit today.
Thank you. I'm excited.
So can you tell all of our listeners / watchers kind of you, like who are you? Where did you come from? How did you get to this spot that you're in right now? And we should say what you do right now as well. So.
Okay. So right now I'm the Vice President of Innovation at EMC Insurance Companies, which is such a weird thing to say.
Why?
I mean, if you had told me, so I grew up in a small town in Iowa, if you had told me this like in the 80s when I was in school and not thinking about career yet, I think I don't know what I know. I don't think I would have known what to think actually.
So the insurance part, the innovation part, all of it, like what?
Yeah, all of it.
All of it.
All of it. So how I got here, I guess, I graduated from college, looking for a career, wanted to be someplace where I knew I could learn and grow. And being from Iowa, opportunities, there's a lot of them in insurance. And if you want to stay in the state, that's a good place to, start your career. So that's what I did. And really just kind of did a little bit of everything in insurance. Started out in claims, which honestly, I think everybody should have to do a stint in claims. And I know that's a little controversial, but you learn so much, not only about insurance, but about yourself. Oh man.
But why is that I spent time in claims and now I'm like, I didn't realize that this was a politically charged or controversial issue. Why is claims controversial?
I think anytime you make a statement with, I think everyone, you say something, that's what I meant.
It's not the claims part in particular.
No, claims is amazing. Like you really will learn so much. I'm so thankful for that time. And I think it also makes you just really appreciate the people who make a career in claims because they're really special people. It's, I obviously could not cut it. But you just learn so much. You learn so much, like I said, not only about our industry, but yourself, and then also how to build relationships, how to have tough conversations. I mean, that's every day in claims. So that's where I started. And then went on to underwriting. That's another role that I think, should definitely spend some time in. Did you spend time there, or were you claims?
I spent time around it. I never underwrote, but I was responsible for an underwriting team. So I don't know if that counts. Probably not.
It counts in.
We'll let it count for
adjacently.
Yes. Right.
Okay. But then from there, I did a little bit of everything. I was really fortunate. I think that's the thing too about insurance is there's so much variety.
Yeah.
And if you're willing to say yes, and if you're willing to kind of take some risks and be really out there with, hey, I don't know all the answers, but I sure will learn them. Yeah. If you take a chance on me, you can really do some interesting things in your career. And I was able to do that and travel a lot and meet a bunch of amazing people and learn a bunch of different skills that brought me honestly to where I am today, because innovation, I think, is just one of those things where you know a little bit about a lot of things. It's probably going to come in pretty handy because day to day is pretty varied.
Yeah. Well, so there's a lot of different ideas out there about what makes for a better innovation team or innovation person. Should they be an outsider? Should they be an insider? Should they be dedicated by function? And so it's someone who's like only done underwriting and they're dedicated to underwriting, but you have both, you're an insider and you have this breadth and you're responsible for a breadth. So do you think that that allows you to do more or a better job or understand things or understand the shoes of the team or the function that you're trying to innovate for? Like, does that become critical for you? Or do you see it as you get why some people might say, oh, that could be you'd be too close-minded because you're already framed in the mindset of what is today. And so you're not going to see all these possibilities that an outsider might see.
That's a tough question because I think it depends. I think it depends on the company. I think it depends on the person, but I think the most important thing is mindset and wanting to elevate others and collaborate with others. So just because I have this varied experience and I know like what it's like to sit in all those different seats doesn't mean I'm the expert, right? So that means I have to lean on other people to come in with the expertise where I do not have that. I can guide things, I can see the whole picture, but I need other people. And I think that's the key thing about innovation is everyone should be an innovator and you shouldn't pretend like you know everything from the beginning to end. You need other people to make this happen. And that's really what we've done on our team at EMC is everyone on our team is brilliant in a completely different way. And I think that's what makes our team so successful. And I love working with people on my team because they're so much smarter than me in different ways. Not saying I'm like the dumbest person in the room all the time. I would always say that, you know how like everybody's got to have that one like little joke they tell. So people are like, no, you're not dumb. I was saying that a lot and I'm like, what am I doing? It's not even funny.
Well, so that's a whole other podcast, but on like,
okay,
why do we put ourselves down?
Your feelings podcast. Got it.
Yeah. I was about to make a joke about how I stopped doing that podcast like a year and a half ago, but I'm not going to make a joke about it. I'll respect it. But do you mean that in terms of like they have different functional backgrounds, they have different styles and ways of thinking, kind of all of the above?
Yeah, all of that. And that's why I wanted to build this team of unique individuals, because even if we're working on the exact same thing, if you've got a different perspective because of your background or a different skill set or just way of thinking, that's what we need. And we need to have those open conversations with people that aren't exactly like us to come out with outcomes that are much better than they would be if Angela was steering the ship all the time. So yeah, they're just awesome.
So we'll not take the self-deprecation, that we'll take the holding your team up and respecting them part of it.
Yes, I use the word elevating a lot. Elevating others. I think that's really the role of any leader, actually, is just to elevate others. I think that's where your focus should be every day. So this is another one of those Angela things where I'm like, everyone should do this. But I do believe that if you're a leader, you should be elevating others.
I totally agree with you. And it's always surprising me when I see leaders who are trying to hold folks down. It's like, I'm high because you're low. It doesn't have to be that way. So I know, like, and we can get into this, but mentorship and development are huge to you. Just to make you feel awkward, and you got recognized for that specifically. You were like the Rise. Was it 2021? The mentor of the year. So like this year. But before we get there, can we talk about innovations more at EMC? Because you know, in the work that I do, I see a lot of different carriers structure innovation many different ways. Some more successful than others, even with the same structure. You know, you'll see one company that structure works really well, another one it doesn't. So I'm convinced that there may not. So that's I'm certain that it's possible that there is no specific right answer, and maybe it depends on the culture, like you were saying before, and you know the whole context of it. But what are some of the things about how you and the team at EMC do innovation that's particular to you, or that you found like this is how we've sort of unlocked things or gotten things moving better?
That was not an overnight thing, right? And so I think the first word I would say to all innovators, if I can say that word, is patience. And really early in my career, one of my first mentors said that to me, that that's going to be the hardest thing for you to learn, Angela. And of course,
Yeah.
I was like, no, it's not. No, it's not. You don't know what you're talking about. But of course, that is true. But it's hard, when you're an innovator and you've got some really great ideas, and you just know, if we just say yes and if we just do this, it'll make such a huge difference. It's hard when you have to practice patience and you have to think about, well, not only what does this mean culturally for our company, but what else is going on that I might not be aware of? Because
Yeah.
if I don't sit in the underwriting desk every day, or I'm not in the field for claims, I don't know what else that they're dealing with or what they're up against. And so if you get that no right away, don't take it personally. It's okay.
Yeah.
There's probably other factors that you're not aware of. So I think patience is the very first thing that we need to make sure we practice: patience and consideration. Culture is a huge part of innovation as well. But also expertise and respect. All of these words that we've been reading in all of these leadership books since the beginning of our career and many years ago, just ring so true in innovation. Innovation is a business unit just like all the others, right?
Yeah.
And so that's really how I approach it at EMC of, okay, we're a business. We're here to make EMC successful. I'm here to elevate the people on my team, help them learn and grow in their careers. Same thing as everyone else, right?
Yeah.
And so how will we do that from an innovation standpoint? And that means being part of the company. We're going to support the structure. We're going to support the strategy. We're going to collaborate with others. We're going to have a lot of conversations, and we're going to get curious. And that's how we're going to find success, is getting in there, being part of it. So I hope that wasn't too vague.
No, I mean, I think that's part of the message, though, that it isn't, and maybe it goes back to my like possibly and might kind of wording, but there is no fixed answer. And a lot of it, like, you didn't mention technology or specific structures, or like, well, you have to use this, like this reporting structure or thought process or whatever. It is more, you're talking about like values and how do you influence others? How do you navigate cultures and companies? And because otherwise you're going to be relegated to the corners. Like, they're just off doing whatever they're doing, judging us. Like, if you're impatient, right, it feels to the receiver like you're judging us. You don't understand what we're up against. You think this stuff's great, but you don't even know what the world is really like. And I see that in some companies where it might as well be another company, like a competitor almost.
Absolutely. Yes. And it can feel that way. But I think the other big thing that we're saying but not saying is open, honest conversations. That you have to have. And in order to do that, you have to build trust.
Yeah.
So I feel like we're kind of like, we started up here, now we're peeling back the layers of, well, what do you need to be innovators? And I think that's the thing, is open, honest conversations and trust, not only with your internal business partners and your stakeholders, but with the external, companies or startups that you're working with. You have to be able to have, like, here's the deal, here's what's
Yeah.
going on. You got to come out and say it. And it's not always fun and it's not always easy, but we're all human beings. We're all trying to be successful and do good things. So let's just be honest with each other.
Yeah. Right. Angela, are there any kind of, not to force the structural stuff, but are there any non-negotiables in your eyes that, like, if these things aren't in place, it's still, like, no matter how great you get along with everyone, it's still going to be tricky? So things like, does the innovation team have a budget to do POCs and proof of concepts? And, well, that is POC, pilots is the other word I was looking for. Things like that. Or, because in my startup work, a lot of times what you see is, the question's like, do you go in through innovation or through the business unit? And the universal answer is, you'll get in faster through innovation, but you'll stall because they don't have the ultimate decision or the budget to do anything. If you go in through the business unit or the operation or the functional unit, it'll take a lot longer. But if you get through, you'll actually get to market. And so I see, like, from my vantage point, I see some of these structural things that could mean, well, you can go through innovation at this company because they've done it this way, and so it's going to move forward. Are there things like that that's like, like, here are some things you can put in place that can lead to more success, or if they're lacking, could actually just be kind of like innovation's an interesting exercise, but it ultimately isn't going to do anything here?
Well, first of all, I don't envy anyone on the startup side that's trying to figure out how do I get into this company? Because you're right, it is different everywhere. So
Yeah.
it's like a guessing game, right? That being said, I would say that, wait a second, now I've lost my train of thought. This might be where you edit. Oh, the most important thing.
Yes.
So even, and I'm gonna just give a little nod to AM Best, because AM Best does have this in their scoring criteria,
Mm,
and it's leadership buy-in. If no matter where you start with the innovation conversation or idea or demo or whatever, or whoever the budget money is, if you don't have that leadership buy-in and saying, yes, I'm committed to innovation, I'm committed to innovative ideas, then it doesn't even have to be technology, it can be cultural.
yeah.
If the leaders aren't walking the walk and aren't in there saying, yes, let's move forward, here I go, you're not going to get anywhere. So it doesn't matter where you're starting. It's all about leaders. And I think that's really where we have strength at EMC is our leaders are committed to innovation. They're in there, they're having those conversations, they're attending those conversations, they're going to those demos, and they're helping us say, okay, which direction are we going to go and why? And I
Yeah.
think that's the other thing too, is when you're innovating, the why is huge, right? So that you know, okay, stop, start, modify, whatever the answer is, you need that leadership work, because otherwise, this from your startup days too, you could be having a conversation with someone for 6 months and then they're like, okay, well, let me tell my leader about this, and then the leader is like, what is this? No.
Yeah.
And then you think, oh, I wish I would have known that
Right.
6 months ago. So anyway, now I'm getting off on a tangent, but
No, but I mean, that's kind of the point, is for startups, especially. I mean, it's one thing like vendors or partners, or whatever nicer word we want to use than vendors, but solution providers in general. If you're a big going company, been around for a while, it stinks to have a long sales cycle or have it dead end after so many months and however many lunches you bought people. But for a startup, actually could be life or death, right? It could be
yeah,
like that runway that they had doesn't last long enough for you to keep like kind of waffling through the internal, like, oh, this person didn't care, and it's like, oh, we had other stuff come up, so we just never talked about it. That it's a lot more consequential. So, and that's why I think so many startups are like, so how do we do this with insurance? What's the path? And they hate the answer, and I'm like, there's no prescribed path. You have to figure it out account by account, which is why networking and relationships matter in this industry, so you can figure out
absolutely.
how does each company work.
Absolutely. And that's the other thing too, is startups continue to ask questions.
Mm,
I think the ones that have worked the best have always asked those questions of who should I be speaking with? And not saying that in an offensive way to me, like, oh my gosh, who else should I talk to? But it's like, are you the right person? There's someone else. Am I doing the right things? Was my demo as focused as it needed to be? What feedback do you have? And I feel like those are the types of relationships where that's how you build that trust.
yeah.
That's how you get that open, honest conversation too. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions would be my
Yeah.
number one advice to startups.
Who should we have in the room?
Hmm. Absolutely.
Versus what you see is like, well, we want to have this person. It's like, well, do you even understand how we operate and who has power and who doesn't, and whose decision this would ultimately be? And that's great. You want to
Right.
sell to that important person you saw on LinkedIn or on our homepage, but
Mhm.
is that actually how it's going to move forward or not? So why don't we talk about it and be open? Like you said, like, be curious every day.
Yeah, absolutely. That's key.
So I know there are people listening that hear you talking about getting leadership bought in, and they're like, oh, wouldn't that be nice? How do you how do you navigate that? And I think that's a very live issue in our industry with, I mean, I keep hearing people who are like, we just need our leadership team to retire, or we need this person to go to a competitor or whatever, to like basically people who are not engaged or blockers. But then I also see carriers where presumed blockers can end up being on side. You just have to like, is there advice that you would give on how to get people who, because you're not working with a completely new slate on the leadership team. There's a
Right.
mix, right? There's new people who
Right.
come in and there's existing people. So how do you navigate that?
It's an art for sure. And it takes a lot of work. And that's where that patience comes in. So I
Mm,
think we're going to have a lot of themes that reoccur during this conversation, but
Sorry, it'll make the show notes much easier to write.
oh no,
Just have the same points.
should have just done that. But no, it's an art. And so I think that's the other thing as an innovator is you can't always be talking at people, because the second, Brian, I come to you and I'm like, hey, I know you've been doing this for, 15 years, but let me tell you about this idea that I have for you that you're going to absolutely love. We're going to schedule a demo for next week, and just come to the meeting. You're going to love this. Yeah. Your first thought is like, well, what are you doing? Why are you stepping on my toes? But it's an art. And so I think what you have to do is you have to listen first and you have to learn. So Brian, I know you've been in this role for 15 years. What are your goals this year? What are your strengths? What are your opportunities? Let me just learn about what you're doing, because then when I'm having conversations in the industry or I come across a solution or a startup connects with me, I know, oh my gosh, Brian is looking for, a solution to make, the first notice of claims more efficient. This is a gap for him, because then suddenly that changes that narrative. Instead of Angela coming and talking at you, it's more like, I listen to you. I understand what your struggles are. Here's something I think could help. Would it be okay for me to take these next steps for you? And I think so, and it's different for everyone, right? Some people will respond really, really well to that, and other people just won't. So you have to kind of figure out, well, how am I going to change this approach each time? But honestly, if you start with listening and curiosity first, you're going to start building those relationships and you'll figure it out as you go.
I'm hearing a lot of, I get why starting in claims can be so valuable, because you have to listen and you have to what you're talking about is almost like empathy. Get the person to tell you their story and then care.
Yes, absolutely. Don't guess what someone else is dealing with, that you're going to be wrong.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well said. So I want to go back to the leadership and mentoring piece and people development kind of thing, like raising everyone else up. That kind of notion, like you do stand out in that regard. You've been recognized for it. Talk to me a little bit about like what's Angela Noble's mentality or philosophy when it comes to people and either mentoring or your own people and helping them to move forward. How do you think about that?
I think you have to truly care about the people that you work with. So, and I mean that in the most general sense of the term, like the people that you work with, you have to actually care about them as human beings. Like you should, because it does matter. Because just, as soon as we shut the laptop down, we have lives outside of this, and those lives don't just stop when we turn the laptop on. So we're all, the good, bad, or otherwise, we're always carrying something with us. And I think you just have to recognize that in other human beings. And then I think from a career standpoint, career stories are going to be different for everyone. So I think as leaders, we need to, once again, get in there and listen. What's important to each member of the team? It's not going to be a cookie cutter. Hey, everybody, here's our goals. We're all going to strive for this. We're all going to do it. And then we're going to get there this way. It's not going to work for everyone. Being a leader requires time and effort and energy for each person. And you need to really care and start that way. So, and I think honestly, the best compliment you can get as a leader is when someone is promoted. So hopefully within your own company. Hopefully they love you so much and you've created such a wonderful culture and environment, they of course want to stay. But when other people recognize that talent and say, wow, I really want Brian on my team. He did an amazing job in this presentation and I want him to come over and work for me now. I think that's an amazing compliment as a leader. And so not saying that like, I want all of my team members to leave. If they're listening to this right now, please don't do that to me. But I think that's a wonderful thing. I think that's what you should do, is help elevate others and really help them get to that next stage in their career, whatever it is.
And your team knows that you mean that. And it's like, it's something you have to demonstrate repeatedly so that if they're having those thoughts, they know they can come and talk to you, because then you're not going to be surprised and you can be supportive. And
absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that goes both ways too, because if I expect them to share with me, I need to share with them. And so each year I do a professional development plan for myself, and I email that to my team so that they can see, okay, well, what is Angela working on? What weaknesses is she aware of? that she's focusing on, and what strengths also are important to me, because I just want them to know that they're also dealing with me as a whole person.
Yeah.
And so I tend to also just share personal things too of, hey, if I seem a little off this week, here's what's going on, or,
Yeah.
you know, it's not you, it's me.
Right. Right.
And
Because
being
otherwise,
vulnerable and open.
yeah,
Yeah.
you leave them to their own devices about like, what did they do wrong? What are they, or they just blindly hate you. It's like, she's just irrational or difficult or whatever. And it's like, we're all people.
Yes, yes. I don't want them to ever fear, because this thing, when your boss comes to you and is like, hey, do you have a minute? Is that like
The
literally the
worst
worst
sound.
thing you can
Yeah.
hear at work? Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, what have I done? I don't want them to ever be afraid when I ask them for time.
Yeah. No one wants to see me on the top of their homework ever.
No, no.
Yeah. And those kind of the do you have a minute never ended with surprise, we're having a party for you and here's $10,000
Yes.
cash. Yeah, it doesn't go that way.
Never. Although we should do that sometime.
We should. Angela, I want to ask you a little bit about things that are to come, but usually when I talk about this, I talk about trends and technology and kind of forces at work in the industry, but I want to stay on this people, leadership, mentorship, culture kind of theme, if you don't mind. What are some of the things you think about when you look at going forward as an industry we need to keep front and center to be able to innovate? So less about the things we're innovating on, but then how we do it. There's so much changing in our culture these days, our talent pool. How do you think about that going forward to keep innovation or help it to thrive within an organization?
I think there's a couple of different things. The first, though, is focus on people, and I think we're at a really interesting time. I just, with the return to work, going on. I think companies need to really listen again, not
Mm,
only just to the people that they work with, but also their key stakeholders, agencies, startups. What do they need? What do people want and need? And really honestly listen, because I almost feel like we're in an impossible situation, because there just isn't one size fits all. And so when people are, I read articles and they're like, well, everybody's quitting because of this reason. And it's like,
yeah.
I don't think so. I don't think we can use the everybody term, even though I already did twice in this conversation. But we can't use it. I think it's just really interesting. I think we can, to use my other word, elevate. I
Yeah.
think we can really elevate our industry right now by making some good decisions and listening to people. So I think workforce is our number one thing of what does the workforce want and need,
Yeah.
and how are we going to work together going forward? That's a huge one.
Yeah, it is. It's huge. It's super topical, and it's thorny is not the right word, but it's like it reminds me a lot of when we think about distribution. And like, well, what does the end customer need? But we also think about what the agent or broker needs and what we need. And usually it's us, and the agent or broker ends up tainting any view of what the end customer needed. It's like, no, that's what you could do or what your distribution will allow you to do, not what the customer was actually asking for. And so you get a lot of like, well, but we have to have everyone together at least this many days to be able to do XYZ. Maybe that's true, maybe it isn't, but maybe we need to talk about that and look for answers. I mean, this is a big, like the debate Apple's had, or people have been having on their behalf publicly for a while, because they were forcing the same 3 days a week, and here's all the reasons why. And so, everyone's got an opinion on it, maybe right, maybe wrong, or it may vary by employee. But how do you keep
Yes.
the machine working if the way you're used to doing it doesn't exist anymore?
I wish I knew the answer to that.
Oh,
I
I thought we were
know.
going to give
If you
everyone.
were
All right.
asking me, I do not know.
But that's the right answer, right? We
I
don't
don't know.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, which no one seems to want to say.
Yeah. And I think that's why we have to keep talking. We have to create environments where people can honestly share whatever it is, right? Whatever their opinion is, or whatever their needs are, we have to create an environment where people can say that. Because otherwise we're never going to make the right decision if we don't know what people want and need. So but we have to
Is
make
it,
sure people are comfortable with that.
yeah. Is it an empowerment thing? Like letting people, like there's other companies, there's a few insurers who've been like, we'd like our people in the office this many days, but we're leaving which days and how, and if it's all at the same time or not, up to each one of the teams to figure out the right answer for them. Like, is it about that? Is like, I always use this example. I don't think I've used it on the show yet though. Mary Barra, who's the CEO of GM, her most recent previous role was running HR for the company, which is like pretty big role. They got a few employees there. One of the first things she did was she rewrote the dress code policy, which just blew my mind. And then I'm like, yeah, maybe I've seen things almost as long. It was 80 something pages long in
What?
the employee handbook just on dress code, because every year they're like, oh, this person wore this and it was inappropriate, so now we have to spell out like this specific thing. And so it was like, it's kind of like insurance policies, right? We just keep tacking on like all the endorsements. That's basically how they did the dress code. And she got it down to one sentence. And it's just dress appropriately for your work or for your
Oh, I
job.
love
I
that.
forgot. And it's like, and people push back and like, no, but employees don't get it. She's like, if we can trust them with this like 80-ton press or with, $3 billion of our capital or, whatever it is, or our brand and the safety of our customers on the road, like this person installing an airbag or something, like, can we not trust them to know what clothes to put on in the morning? And that
Yep.
was like her one pushback to everything. And everyone was sort of left like, I don't have a leg to stand on. I can't say anything.
Love that. I
And that
love
was like a
that.
decade ago. So they're still, I don't think anyone's shown up to work naked or wearing like a costume, or
Well,
seems like it's
costume
been okay.
maybe.
Maybe on Halloween. Yeah. But anyway, it's
I,
like generally people can actually wear, like they know what to wear. And if they don't, then that's a one-on-one discussion.
Absolutely. And actually, you just made a point that I was going to make because you're making me think of it. You said trust and then one-on-one conversation. And I think that's the key going forward too, is we have to be able to trust the people that we work with
Hmm.
to do what's expected and then have one-on-one conversations if that's not happening. And that's how it was always before anyway, right?
Yeah.
And so I that's why like I feel like even as a leader weirdly comfortable with not knowing because it's still my role as a leader to have one-on-one conversations to make sure people know what's expected of them and then helping them deliver that. Like that's still my job.
Yeah.
So even if I'm in the office and someone else isn't, that's still my job, right?
Yeah.
So you can probably maybe you're picking up on what my opinion is on it. I don't know if I care where people are working. If you have the right people in the roles, and if you've got a leader that says, "Hey, here's what I expect of you. Here's what we want to deliver in your role," and you're having those conversations, then you can probably still be pretty successful. So,
Yeah.
Angela's opinion.
Well, I think that's a good shout though on setting expectations. And it's not just empowering, but it's like, well, I always hear like, well, we don't know if they're doing their work or not. It's like, well, whose fault is that? Well,
Yeah.
first of all, have you employed people who are like, no, when I'm home, I'm not going to open my laptop, and we've all seen people like that. But then the other is like, well, have you set the right expectations with them so that they
Right.
understand what they need to be doing, so they don't need you to
Yes.
micromanage them?
Yes.
Yeah,
And have you had a conversation? Exactly. I think that's just the thing is it takes so leadership. This is the other thing that people don't say. Oh my gosh, we're just saying all the hard things today.
good.
But leadership is hard. It's hard. There's so much that goes into it. You have your own role, and then you need to make sure that you are there for other people who depend upon you. Like
Mm,
you have to put in the time and the work. And then once you do that, then the rewards start coming in, right? So when you take the time to have a conversation about expectations or performance or whatever, people will respond to that. And they're going to
yeah,
respond in one of two ways, either got it, on it, or got it, nah, not for me.
yeah, right.
And, you know,
And then they
so
get promoted to
okay.
a competitor.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's up to them. So I don't know. I think, it's hard, but if you put in the time and the effort, you do get rewards back and seeing other people shine. And I love that. I love creating opportunities for people to be able to do that. And that's what I hope we have on my team too, is just the environment where you can say, this going forward, this is my preference for working. Okay, then how are we going to do that together? How are we going to make sure you are successful in this environment? And that might be different for everyone. That's
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah.
Woo,
So
this is exhausting.
sorry. What else? I mean, maybe thinking about some of the industry trends, the technology or whatever. What are some of the things that you think are gaining traction right now, or that will be more front and center? I just got asked to do a
Yeah.
like 2022 predictions, and I was like,
Okay.
I don't know.
Well,
So I'm doing it to you instead. But what do you
okay.
think? 2022 or later doesn't matter. But what are some of the things that you think are brewing right now from like the way that the industry works and does things, and the kinds of products and solutions and all that kind of stuff?
So I think first of all, the definition of innovation will start to change a little bit, because I think the second that we say innovation, people think, oh no, data technology, not for me.
Mm,
That's not it. I think what we just talked about is innovation. Innovation is about embracing those changes and being open to new ideas. And so when we talk about the new workforce, you're going for, that's innovation.
mm,
That's innovation, and everybody's involved. And so I think that's the other point I want to make too, is innovation. We had this trend for a while. It was on these centralized teams. And if you had the word innovation in your title, that's what you do. No one else does it. The innovation team
yeah.
does innovation. But I think that's also changing of, hey, we're proving to ourselves that innovation is everyone. You are responsible for innovation in your own role and bringing those ideas forward. Angela, with the title of innovation, I don't know everything about your role. I shouldn't be responsible for everything in your role. You probably don't want that. But everybody's an innovator. And I think that's also like empowering. That's a cultural thing too, of what can you do and how can you bring this to your role? But then what resources are available to you
Mm,
to make that happen? And I think that's where the innovation culture is coming in of, hey, I've got an idea. I'm an underwriter. I think this solution I saw at a conference could really help, or, but where do I go from there? And then that's bringing in those other resources. And I think the third thing, of course, is technology. I think we have to pay attention to what consumers want and what agencies want. And then
yeah.
as carriers, we have to be able to embrace that. We have to listen. And technology is making that possible. So those are my three.
How
I
on
think
the
that
last
was,
one? How do you
yeah.
and your team know what's going on there, and what does the consumer want? What is, the end insured? What does the agent want? How are you getting like a genuine view from them of what's interesting or what they need?
Once again, it starts with building trust with internal stakeholders. So I don't own, quotes, own the relationship with our agency partners, but I work with people who do. So
Mm,
building that trust and saying, hey, I think I could do my job even better if I were able to answer these types of questions, or can you help me understand what our agencies are really looking for? That's where you start to bring people in and build that trust. So instead of Angela just Googling insurance agent and then just calling people, it's working with the people that already have those established relationships. And then the same thing for customers, working with our customer experience team to really understand, hey, what gaps and strengths do we have? What are you hearing? What are you seeing? And then how can I elevate and empower the work that you're already doing with innovation and innovative technologies? Hope that answered your question.
yeah. I mean,
Okay.
so I think there's a clear theme to this whole conversation. So we're talking about innovation, like people are thinking technology and data and whatever, and you haven't talked about any of that. You've
Nope.
talked instead about like how do you like comport yourself? How do you engage with people? How do you try to move an organization forward, which isn't about the specific solutions that you may or may not see?
Nope. I think sometimes I think that's why it's failed, because people start backwards and they
Mm,
come in with the solution and they say, you need to plug this in, it's going to work. And just trust me. Just look, I met them at a conference and I had 2 demos with them and I really like this guy. Just do it.
yeah.
It's instead having that patience up front and really understanding, what are we trying to solve for and why? Because then suddenly, when as a carrier, if I come to you and I say, I'm trying to solve this problem, this is why we need it, and you're a startup and you think, I got the solution for you, I can do that, or
Yeah.
probably not a fit. I can do these things, but not this. Like it becomes such a better conversation anyway for all parties. And so yes, that my team, we flip it around. We have a lot of conversations first, a lot of building trust and relationships, and then we figure out how to make it happen together.
Cool.
Yeah. I'll never pretend to know anything about data or analytics. Like I wish I did. I certainly, when I had this job, was my intention to be like, I'm going to study this. I'm just going to be like the master of data. And then I found out, wow, I have other things to do during the day. Oops. So that didn't happen, but no.
Right. Well, but your role is not to be the expert on each specific solution.
No.
It's to help bring the right ones and bring them through to the organization if they are actually fits for where you're trying to go.
Right. Yes. And I have brilliant people on my team to mostly do that for me. And I'm like, that sounds good. You're probably right.
I have a feeling you're underselling yourself, but that's all right.
Thank you. Yeah, I need to work on that. I do. Okay.
Angela, anything else before we go?
I don't think so. This was really fun. It went really fast.
Good. I always like that. They should feel like a conversation. I think that's more fun to listen to. So hopefully the listeners and watchers, it's going to be a better word than watchers. Viewers?
That does sound slightly creepy.
Sounds creepy. Well, look, on that note, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you to Angela for joining me for the conversation. And I love that. Look, this is someone who is responsible for innovation at a carrier. And we didn't go into anything specific, any specific trends or anything like that beyond the people side of it, beyond the values, the approach. And she's right. This is a moment where one of those key trends is going to be all about how we engage with our people, with our partners, with those around us, how we navigate that return to whatever it is that, so many companies are battling with, whether we become a victim of that great resignation that you hear so much about, or if we're one of those elevating, to use her words, a change in the ways that we work and get the best out of all of our people and have them feel like they're contributing their best and growing as best they can. It's really actually people-centric conversation. And I hope that was valuable for everyone. A nice reminder to think about your impact on your team around you and those that you're leading. Angela's right. Leadership is a very tough job. And you really have to make sure that you are contributing to the betterment of those that you are supposed to be leading. That's what it's all about ultimately. So thank you again to Angela for spending some time, fun conversation with her. Thank you to all of you for tuning in to Duck Creek, the Conversations on the Creek podcast. It's great. Definitely check that out and listen to Rob and what his guests are talking about. And I will see you here for another episode next time. Thanks, everyone.